given warning at the beginning of a programme if there's going to be anything about the Beatles, as all Beatle fans can make sure to listen, and have a chance to ring up other fans to make sure they are also listening.
Hi everybody, this is John here. This is Paul, George,
and Ringo.
And we're very happy to be on your program once again.
Hi everybody, this is Steve Marinucci and welcome to Beatles News Brief show number 112. Today our guest is Madeline Bocaro, the author of In Your Mind, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono, a great biography of Yoko, and the reason she's here today is because of Yoko's 93rd birthday on February 18th. And we talk about Yoko, as we did before, we talk about Yoko's history, but we also talk in this show about her legacy and what her legacy in the Beatle world will be. So here we go. We hope you enjoy the show. And stick around, we'll have a few words to say at the end. Hello everyone, this is Steve Marinucci. I can't believe it's been almost a year since Madeline Bocaro and I have talked, but we are talking again. And the reason we are talking again is because Yoko is coming up on her 93rd birthday on February 18th. And to that end, we wanted to go back a little bit and look at her life. But we also wanted to talk about her place in Beatle history, how she will be remembered. And I think that's an interesting idea. Beatle fans have had all sorts of opinions on her, but I think that she will have a place in Beatle history. You know, what can I say? I mean, Madeline, hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Let's first talk about her birthday coming up. I know you have connections to her and to the family. I assume they are going to have some kind of a celebration on the 18th. Is that right?
I'm not privy to it, but I'm sure it's going to be private like it's been in the past few years. She's really retired from the public eye now. And yeah, I'm sure they'll be celebrating it.
Okay. Have you heard anything about her? Any ruminations about what she's been doing? I know she doesn't do very much. You know, she used to be very active on social media, and her account is still active. But have you heard about anything about her specifically?
No, not really. There are many, many exhibitions going on right now. There's the big one at the MCA in Chicago, called Music of the Mind, and one just wrapped up at the Tate Gallery in England. There was a big one at MoMA in 2015. That's the one that's traveling now. It's going to LA pretty soon. And she really doesn't have to do anything. Her art is speaking for her. There are all kinds of articles coming out now that says everyone is arguing about Yoko again, or, Yoko is everywhere again. And there's many, many celebrations of her work going on. In fact, the MCA exhibition wraps up next month, and they're having performances of Cut Piece. They're having a musical night tribute to her. It's just so much is going on. It's incredible.
Would you know if the exhibition is coming or where the exhibition is coming?
I don't know after LA, but it's been here, so it won't be in New York, I don't think, for a while.
Okay. I'm interested to see if it gets to San Francisco. I hope so. That would be very cool. Let's go back and talk about her. One of the things that you said in your book, and I'm quoting from the book, it says, "This man and woman symbolically brought East and West together in peace. John and Yoko saved each other. Their incredible story encompassed the world. They gave them of themselves, stripped completely naked with truth and honesty." Let's talk about that. How did that, explain what you say when you say that?
Well, I don't think John or Yoko would have been able to go on much longer by themselves if they hadn't met each other. They were both extremely lonely, extremely misunderstood. John was on this high level of fame. He was just this Beatle, and he had so much more inside that he wanted to bring out. Yoko was on a lesser level of fame. She was in the art world, but she was misunderstood there. Her important work was misunderstood, and they came together and they found another person who was on their wavelength at the same level of genius, because both of them are brilliant and they were just such bright people. and they nourished each other and they saved each other. So I think, that's what I meant by that. And then they were both very sincere, honest, and truthful. And that's another commonality that helped drive their messages forward. And fortunately or unfortunately, that maybe is what did John in, that level of fame and speaking out as much as he did.
I remember some of the media coverage from back then, and I'm sure you do too. It was the media really didn't know what to do with them. The bed-ins especially, confused everybody because the media was basically establishment media.
But they covered it and it got out there and everybody knows about it even to this day. So, they were successful in it. The media, just the crazy questions the media would ask them. They made the whole thing a spectacle so that there could be some levity involved, that it wouldn't be so serious. But it was a serious subject that they wanted to get across, ending the war. And he did do the media interviews one by one, and those were printed, and that's where he spoke out. But in the basic coverage in the room that went out on TV, everybody just saw them in the bed, and that's all they know.
A good place to start for people who want to see them in action is the Dick Cavett shows,
Oh,
which
yeah.
are online on YouTube. It's too bad that the Mike Douglas shows aren't out there in total. You can find those if you know where to look.
Home was great. Did you see Daytime
Yes,
Revolution?
yes, it really would have been nice if they had repackaged those shows. They did do it once before when they were released
VHS in
and
Japan.
you can still find the VHS, the entire VHS package out there, and if you look around, you might find a good price on it. Those are very unique what they did.
Very. And the
Um,
film shows a lot of pretty lengthy clips from it. I'm surprised how long they did let them go. And it's pretty representative, I think. But yeah, seeing them in their entirety is there's nothing like it.
yeah, I remember watching those in the day because my mother was a Mike Douglas fan and she watched him every single day.
Same with
And
me. This is my turn. John and Yoko in your face on your show.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty amazing back then what they did. Another thing that you mentioned, and this is how Yoko's personality is so different, and I say different, but I don't mean different bad. I mean, she followed her own step. She did what she wanted to do. And you mentioned a girl sending Yoko a letter saying that December 8th, which was the day of John's murder, was her birthday. And Yoko answered her back saying not to be upset, but instead celebrate the day because not only was it the day that you came into the world, but also the day John's spirit was set free to travel the universe. That says a lot right there of how her spirit is.
And
And
that's just part of it. She continued to send this girl a birthday card for decades.
oh, did she really?
Well, that's what she told me.
And then you talk about in the book your encounters with her yourself. And you start with the day you met her, and you're very descriptive about what happened. Can you talk about that, the first day you met her?
Yeah, sure. I had been writing to her since I was about 14 years old. One day after John was killed, my friend used to go to the Dakota and see both of them. And she said to me, "Oh, you should come with me one day. We'll go to see Yoko." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't like standing out there on their doorstep. That's kind of creepy. She said, "No, no, let's go." And I said, "Well, I'll only do it if we go on her birthday. And I'm only staying for 5 minutes. I'm not going to stand there all day." So she said, "All right, let's go." So we went and I had a present wrapped up for her with a letter. And Yoko came out within 5 minutes. It was her birthday, so her friend Sam had taken her on a horse and carriage ride in the park, and they were coming out of the park. She rolls up like Cinderella in this carriage, and she gets out, and she kind of knew we were there for her, and she saw the presents, and she came right up to us, and we talked for a little bit, and I gave her the card, and I told her who I was, and she recognized my handwriting. She went, "It's you." She says, "Oh my God, I'm having this exhibition of John's artwork. You have to come to this." And after that, she invited me to her exhibitions, her concerts, and she just embraced me with open arms. It was really wonderful because I think in all my letters, I was just talking about her work and her music, and she totally understood that I got her and I loved her. So she was thrilled with that because back then it was very few and far between that people were approaching her for anything about her own self.
That's a very cool story. Another thing I picked out of the book was on the Star Piece tour, but the quote that you had in the book said, "I do many of the freaky songs so that you know I'm not lip syncing," which I
Mhm.
thought was really, that's kind of her humor.
Oh, she's so funny.
She does have a sense of humor, which is really kind of interesting. People who know her on the surface from being with John wouldn't know that, but that's really kind of cute. And then the other thing that you quoted in there that I saw, it said, she told me she still gets lots of hate mail. And her quote was, "Don't stop sending me some letters which are special to me." So in other words, she took to all the letters she got, no matter who they were from.
Right. One time
And
she said that she saw piles and piles of mail after John was killed. And she thought, oh, it's terrible that John's not here to answer these, but a lot of them were for her. And she's really surprised.
and as we've said before, when she was on social media, she was answering people directly. She answered a question of mine one time. I don't remember what it was. She would answer your questions. A lot of celebrities
No,
don't.
she thrives on communication. A lot of people have got lots of letters from her, or at least autographs, and she answered everything. She's really
Yeah, and
into
she sent Christmas cards to people every year,
that too.
and that's just the way she is.
Yeah.
Another fact, and this is not related to what we were just talking about, was that Tony Cox was not her first husband.
Mm-hmm.
Ishinagi,
Kuchiyonagi.
Ishinagi was her first husband, and he was her connection to John Cage, the avant-garde composer.
Right, right.
Did that get her started on avant-garde?
She was in the avant-garde art world, and this brought her into the avant-garde music world because she was attending classes at Sarah Lawrence. And her professor said to her, you know, you're way out there. There's this group of people in Manhattan who I think you would relate to. And that he sent her to go see John Cage and all and George Machunas. And, you know, she just fell in with all those people. She did go on a concert tour of Japan with John Cage, performing with him and her husband Toshi and Mayuzumi, who was with them. But she didn't really enjoy it as much because it was such a man's world that she didn't get to do her own pieces and she didn't get the recognition and she was just despondent about that. So she went out on her own again.
She was also briefly an actress.
Yeah, briefly in one movie.
And I've seen the movie, and it's not great, but it's her. Did she ever talk about the acting that she did?
No, she didn't ever talk about it. It was just something she did to earn money because not only can't an artist live on their art alone, but her art was not even tangible. It was all ethereal in your mind, and you couldn't sell a piece of her work. So she had to work to earn her stay in New York City. So she would do origami lessons, she would transcribe Japanese, she worked at the Japan Center. Japan Society of it. And she had to just do these things. And she got this movie part.
And the movie wasn't even what you would call artistic.
It was directed by this guy, Michael Finley, and he was like an underground New York City guy. And he made that infamous movie Snuff, where allegedly somebody actually was, demised during it.
What was the name of her movie, though?
Satan's Bed.
Okay, for anybody that wants to look it up.
Actually, I think she's doing a really good acting job because she's playing a demure, victimized woman.
Hmm.
And that's the opposite of her. She doesn't let anybody victimize her. I mean, she's got it from all angles and she's still continued. And she was never demure. She was just confident and just forthright and always went ahead with what she had to do. And she's acting like a very meek Japanese woman. And I guess she saw that all around her growing up in society in Japan. She does a really great job in the film.
Yeah, it's definitely not what you would expect from her. And
No.
that's What's really interesting about that?
And it's in 1965, so she's still pretty young.
Yeah, it's before John. Let's talk a little bit. I know we talked about this last time, the meeting between John and Yoko at the Indica Gallery. It's really kind of interesting because, number one, she was there to do an art show, and John comes in and she says she doesn't know who he is.
So most of the premise of my book is to debunk all the lies and rumors. And I've been following her career since I was a kid, like let's say 1967, 68.
Hmm.
And her second husband, Tony Cox, was a fan of her artwork. He's American. He found out through Toshi that she was hospitalized in Japan, and this was after a suicide attempt. So he went to Japan and got her released from the hospital, and he became her assistant and promoter. They eventually made it to London. They went to London during the swinging 60s, and he approached John Dunbar, the owner of Indica Gallery, who he co-owned it with Miles and with Peter Asher. And he introduced John Dunbar to Yoko, and he gave her the show. And Yoko was in the basement setting up her show the night before the opening. And she told Dunbar not to bring anyone in. She wanted just to work on this herself, and it's going to be all white and pristine at the opening. But Dunbar brings John Lennon in the night before. And she's like, who is this guy? What's he doing? And he wanted to tamper with the art. He picks up the apple, he took a bite out of it, and she was mortified, and he wanted to hammer a nail into the hammer and nail painting. And she said, no, I want to keep it fresh before the opening. So John said, well, can I hammer a nail, imaginary nail, if I give you imaginary 5 shillings? And she realized, oh, he knows how to play my game here. Once she said imagine, and in your mind, that was her game. So she's
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, I don't know. But I found a quote from 2010. Yoko said, they were standing in front of my exhibit, which was a blank canvas. John was looking at it like it was the most important painting in the world. I was standing a bit away from them, and I thought, he's a very attractive, elegant guy. And then she was asked, on this show called Speaking Freely in 2012. Did you know that a Beatle was there, or did you have any idea who John was at the time? She said, at the time I didn't, but there were students from St. Martin's School of Art helping me for the display. Right after he left, they were all standing there. One of them said, I think that's John Lennon of the Beatles. The way he said it very slowly, it sounded very impressive. And then when she got home, she mentioned to her friends that she had met John. And Dan Richter, in his book, The Dream is Over. Now, Dan Richter was her friend since the 60s, and he became her and John's assistant until the early 70s. And she gets home, and Dan Richter wrote, she wondered aloud if John Lennon is really that important. Tony Cox emphatically reminded her who the Beatles were and who John was, and encouraged Yoko to pursue John as a patron. So she didn't know who he was. And then once they said who he was, she said, oh, I guess he's important. She's like, is he that important? Are the Beatles that important? That she was so much in her own world. She's in the
Right.
art world. She didn't have a music room with a turntable and pop records. It was 1933 when she was growing up in Japan, right? There was no dance hall music. There was no rock and roll radio. She's listening to Japanese folk music played on the koto and kabuki and no theater. And, so the Beatles, weren't in her realm.
Right. In the interview with Joe Smith, she said she had heard of the Beatles, like she had heard of Elvis, but she wasn't immersed in the Beatles at all.
Right.
And that meeting with John was the beginning of that whole thing. And from there, everything just took off.
Well, it took a while. They didn't really get together till almost a year later. So more than a year later, really together. So
Right.
they danced around it because it's such a heavy thing. She knew the immensity of what this would imply. They had both been married. John had a child, she had a child, and it was just going to be very, very heavy. And there's a quote where she says, when John left the Beatles, he turns around one day and goes, okay, now it's just you and me. And she shuddered because she thought, what's he going to do now? What's he going to be preoccupied with while I'm doing my work? And she never dreamed that she would work with anyone together, let alone John Lennon, who wasn't an artist, but he became an artist. She became a pop star with the music that he brought her into. So they hit the ground running, really.
And how wonderful it was that their last work together, and we're talking both Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey, was the two of them working, on the same album. It wasn't John doing his own album and Yoko doing her own, although they did do that.
Mhm.
But the last two things together that they actually worked on together were cooperative pieces like that. That was really wonderful that that happened.
Yeah, well, she said early on, like in 1985, that John was always wanting to make the world aware of her work, whether it was the art or the music. And, she made it hard for him to do that because she was so independent. And he would suggest, like, let's get someone to cover your songs. And she'd say, no, I don't want anyone to cover my songs. And he offered to do it himself. He's like, what if I sing your songs? And she said, no, because then they'll think it's your song. And she kind of regretted that she made it that difficult for him because maybe it would have brought more people into her world.
What's going to be her legacy? And I hesitate to say that because, we're thinking ahead but I mean, I think that's a good question to the point that, when she started, when Beatle fans knew her originally, there was a lot of negativity around it. And I think a lot of that has dropped off. There's still people that aren't that familiar with everything about her that still talk negatively. But with and without John, she's made a name for herself. And you know, what do you think will happen? I think, for one, the art is going to live forever. I mean, there's no question about that. And I think we'll still see, art exhibits everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah, that's her most important aspect in all the mediums that she worked in. I mean, there are some films that are pretty intense too that go along with the art, and I think that will be her legacy. She does have fans of her music. In fact, my next book is going to be exclusively about her music. I'm interviewing a lot of musicians, icons who have worked with her, others that have been influenced by her. And my biography has chapters about every album and every song, but this is going much deeper. This is going to be the cover. It's called Listen, the Musical Universe of Yoko Ono.
Ooh. When would you say next year?
Yeah.
And what's the new book going to have that the first one didn't?
Well, it's going to have some more in-depth interviews. I've got Jim Keltner. I'm going to get Gary Vinsayak, people that played on Approximately Infinite Universe. Just a lot of quotes from musicians who worked with her about their favorite Yoko songs, about what she demanded of them in the studio, and also collaborations and cover versions that I didn't get into in the biography, musicians who covered her work and tribute albums and things like that.
Do you know of any Yoko music that is sitting in the can that we're going to see in the next few years?
I don't know about the intent of putting it out, but there's certainly, she always talked about an archive of songs that she had because, like, when she was recording Season of Glass, she was so devastated by the passing of John, but she wanted to put out an album. And a lot of the songs that on there are from 1974 or 3 even. She went back and found things that she had written back then, and surprisingly, they sound so apropos to what happens to John. It was very prescient. So she does have a lot of things. I don't know how many demos she made on her own with a tape in her house, but I know she has a lot of written notations and lyrics that she might have never put out.
That should be interesting. And can't wait for the book. That's going to be wonderful. Is it just going to be the book, or are you going to have something around it, some audio or something,
If I could get the rights, I don't know. If I made it an ebook, I would love to link to some of the songs, but you can always look up. They're around, see what I'm referring to. But as far as her legacy, it's really hard to tell. Sean's doing his best. He's got a job there. He's got Yoko, John, and the Beatles, and they're putting out all these beautiful box sets of unreleased material in a chronological way, in an explanatory way, showing the evolution of how these songs came together. And it's just beautiful, beautiful work that he's doing. And it's good on both ends. The older fans are getting to hear things they've never heard and appreciate it more. And the younger fans are getting a new release, these new sets that they can explore for the first time. So that's great. Sean actually did an interview with CBS Morning News recently about that. He's like, I'm afraid the Beatles legacy could easily die off if we don't, keep it going. And there's a lot of young people into the Beatles now, loads. But then there are some younger kids that never heard of them. Same with Yoko. She's probably the most famous woman in Japan, but also, in America, she's famous too, but there's this misunderstanding in her. And then a friend of mine who actually works for a Japanese company brought my book to her office and left it there in the lunchroom. And most of the Japanese coworkers didn't know who Yoko was. They're in America, but still, I mean, that's kind of weird too. So it just depends on what segment of the populace you're surveying, if you've heard of the Beatles or Yoko or not.
Hmm.
But in the art world, I think she will endure. I mean, she came from Japan at the same time as Kusama, who's in a similar vein of artist. A woman came here in the 50s. She worked, she's just driven to draw these dots and make this artwork. And now she's one of the most lucrative artists in the world, and she's still going at it. She's in her 90s as well. So I think that's the keel that Yoko is going to be on. She'll be one of those very, very well-known artists.
Hmm. Let's talk about some of the stuff that has come out. What did you think of Power to the People?
Oh, I think it was great. I really loved the isolated tracks of Yoko's songs and of Sisters of Sisters, which was, whenever I listen to that song, I always get like this emotional surge. I don't know why. It's just such a magical kind of a song. And then when I heard the isolated synth string arrangement, I'm like, oh my God, this is what's under here. This is what's making it so beautiful. And when you think of the Sometime in New York City album, you don't think of string arrangements, but John had string arrangements under all of these songs, like Born in a Prison, Angela, Luck of the Irish, just beautiful, beautiful arrangements that are kind of buried in the mix. Actually, for Yoko's song, they were done by Ron Frangipane, who's a very famous producer. He did this Archie's Sugar Sugar. And he did all the arrangements for Yoko's Approximately Infinite Universe and Happy Christmas, the strings on that. So yeah, that box set is fantastic. They've got the live concerts, the albums tracks, the evolution of the tracks, the isolated parts, and the book. And what a beautiful and the lenticular album cover where
Right.
the faces
Yeah.
merge.
What about the tracks that they left off?
Well, if they had to put it on there, we wouldn't have a box. Sean hated the fact as well, but he wasn't going to fight with them over it. And I know they'd rather put their time into other things than fighting legalities about that. I mean, I love that song. I think it's fantastic. I would have loved to hear the isolated bits of it. I'd love to hear the remix, but it is what it is. We have what we have.
But everybody argued that Sean backed down when he shouldn't have. Do you know if that was the reason? Because they'd been talking about this project for years. Was that the reason that this thing got held off so long?
From what I've read, I think so. That's what I've been reading.
Okay.
But I was at that concert, the afternoon performance. So the whole
Right.
thing is so special to me, and I'm glad that it got released without the song. I don't, it's not going to kill me.
But at least the song itself is still out there. It's on the Sometime in New York City CD. Anyway, but yeah, no, I agree with you that hearing those songs in different formats or different arrangements and hearing the evolution of those songs was really enlightening, especially for the fact that the album itself, Sometime in New York City, got a lot of criticism from the mixing. And the sound is so much better on the box set. And
Mm.
The concert tracks sound really, really wonderful. I mean, they really do. And for all the criticism that comes with that set, I mean, it's a beautiful set. It's well worth buying. I know a lot of people, again, got angry, but I mean, it's worth it. And it's the only way you're going to get that stuff.
It's all a gift. I mean, it's just so great.
Yeah. And you can argue, would it have happened if John was here? But unfortunately, this is now. That was then, this is now, as the song goes. So
Of course, I'd rather have him here than the box, but we have it now, so.
we have it now. Is there anything else about her that is going to happen that you know of? That, I mean, you said the art exhibits are going to continue.
Mhm.
Are there any projects that you know of associated with her that are going to happen? Has Sean got anything in the works?
Not that I know of. He did those secretly Canadian releases up into a point, so I'm hoping the last batch will come out eventually. But I
Mhm.
know he's got a new album of his own coming out with the Lennon Claypool Lennon Delirium that he's really excited about and going to tour with. And so that's what he's working on now. I mean, the poor kid, he's been doing nothing but box sets, box sets, box sets. And now Walls and Bridges is the next thing, I think. So.
Yeah, that's what everybody seems to think, although there hasn't been anything official, but that's what everybody is hoping. So who knows when we'll see that next year? I mean, this Christmas, hopefully. We don't know yet. But you've got your book coming. Are
Got
you
that
gonna?
book coming. I've got this one out. This one is now an ebook, the ultimate Yoko biography. There is nothing like this. Most books are about her artwork exclusively, a lot of intellectualizing, whatever. I explain her art in her own words mostly, in simple terms, like the simple art that it is, but heavily meaningful and deep. And yeah, there's chapters about every album and every song, but this is 600 pages and it's her life, her work, her art, her relationship with John, her childhood in Japan, her ancestry, all very, very fascinating. The 60s, the 70s, it's almost like, for people of a certain age, you lived this and but you don't know all the details and all the incredible correlations and connections. So it took me 50 years to write this book pretty much. So
There's nothing like that book to understand her. And you and I have both had the privilege of seeing her in action. I was lucky enough to see her in concert with Sean in Oakland, California, and she also made a incredible lecture at Stanford University that would turned into a multimedia thing. She didn't just talk; it was biographical, and I'll never forget that night. It was amazing to be there and see the cut piece live. And
mm.
as I mentioned when we talked last time, I said you've heard about this thing and you think it's weird, but to see it happen is a completely different experience, and that's what it was.
I have a whole chapter on it in the book. It's incredible. She's really, I used most of her own words because over the years, everything she says is so wise and prescient and important. And her biggest message is that, we're just misplacing our values. Water is more important than gold. We're looking at things from a standpoint of competition, and we're not really living the way we should be. And she just goes on. There's just words and words and words of beauty. And some people said, oh, I was going to read 10 pages tonight, but I read one page and I just had to just stop and keep just letting it sink in and rereading just a sentence over and over. I mean, wow, I never thought of this.
The other thing about her legacy is her positivity, and that, you know, she has been so incredibly positive. I mean, that quote about getting the letters from people and relishing them is just an example of the way she is. That's just an amazing situation, but she is that way.
Positivity went a long way for her. And it's amazing how much negativity was thrown at her throughout her life. At one point, she said she began to stutter, and she was a very strong woman. And she's married to John, and people started saying, you should go away, you should leave him alone. he means so much to us. What are you doing with it? And she literally just developed a stutter. And she was like, why am I letting this get to me? Terrible.
There's so many things about her that are just incredible. And whether John was fully aware of what he was getting into as far as how unique she was at the beginning, I mean, he really found an incredible person. And
Yeah,
I
as
mean,
whimsical as she was, and she was really kind of like a Zen master that was very, very wise, but she still had the wonderment of a child. So she had this complexity and also a sense of humor and all of that wrapped up in one. And she could also give him psychological advice. She was the first one to tell him, you don't have to do this, be in the Beatles. You don't have to. Certain things that opened his eyes.
her kind of positivity would go a long way at the moment. Madeline's has been great. Congratulations on the new book, which I know will be wonderful. Don't forget, folks, if you want to get Madeline's book and you are into Kindle and ebooks, the ebook is available in all the usual places. But the book itself is something else.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And as usual, I'm going to hit the button and find it. So here we go.
Thanks very much for listening to our podcast today. If you enjoyed our program, we'd really appreciate a positive review at the place where you get your podcasts. Apple and Google love positive reviews, and it really helps us. If you don't already, please subscribe to our show so you'll get our newest shows right away. We have some great shows coming up. We would love to hear your suggestions for the show, so please write to us at BeatlesNewsBriefs@gmail.com or catch us online on Facebook in our Beatles News and Information group. If you've missed any of our past shows, you can hear them at marinucci.podbean.com. And please tell your friends about us. We appreciate you all for listening. Now here again is Steve Marinucci.
And we have a quick Beatle news brief for you. Our friend Brooke Halpin announced that his story, A Magical Mystery Time, has got a movie deal with Canada's AMG Visuals. The storyline concerns a teenage boy from the 60s captivated by the Beatles who escapes from his dysfunctional family, creates a fantasy world, and thinks he's a Beatle himself. Congratulations, Brooke, and best of luck to you. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. You can hear our complete list of shows at marinucci.podbean.com in audio and in video and audio at youtube.com. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. We would love to have you, and you'd find out about the shows as soon as they're published. Again, thanks for supporting us, and take care, everybody, and until next time, we'll be seeing you.
What a show!